Welcome back to the channel. I hope you've been enjoying our journey through the states. We're not very far into it, but we're at Arizona. So we're at the third state so far. We've done Alabama and Alaska. Moving on to Arizona. So Arizona is the 48th state to be admitted into the Union. So it's actually one of the last states to be admitted. There's only two states after this that are newer in the United States history. Population of the state is 7.2 million, at least as of the most recent evaluation. The capital of the state is Phoenix. One of the most well-known nicknames for the state is the Grand Canyon State. Arizona's pretty famous for having the Grand Canyon as part of the state. It is 113,909 square miles in area. Yeah, there we go. And that is equivalent to roughly 295,022 square kilometers. It makes it the sixth largest state in the Union. Some of the largest cities in Arizona are Phoenix, Flagstaff, Yuma, Mesa. In fact, Arizona is the 14th most populous state, with Phoenix, interestingly enough, being the fifth largest city in the United States. Interesting. It's interesting to have one of the largest states, or one of the largest cities in the United States, kind of on the interior here, as opposed to like New York or California, having such concentration of population in those two areas. All right, moving on. So there is a lot of prehistory that is, or maybe what I should say is, the land that is known as Arizona has a lot of prehistory. I'm not so much interested in the prehistory, though it is there. And if you want to go down to Arizona and look around for like cliff dwellings and cliff art, things like that, you can definitely find it. There are places that that have been inhabited by humans for hundreds of years, and those were, there were some places that were inhabited and abandoned, and all before Europeans ever saw the land there in Arizona. So I'm more interested in kind of the history of Arizona and it becoming a state. So it was first explored in the 1540s. It was first started exploration by the Spanish in 1539. Marcos de Niza was one of the first Spanish explorers in the area, and he was later followed, or his explorations were later followed by those of Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, quite well-known explorer of that time period was Coronado. So the territory, the land, belonged or was claimed by the Spanish at first, and then when Mexico became independent from Spain, it was part of the country of Mexico. Now, that all changed in 1846 during the Mexican-American War, when the United States was at odds with Mexico. At that point in history, the land was annexed by the United States. It was a land grab. We did it. The land was then formally ceded towards the end of the hostilities with Mexico in 1848, and it became in 1850 the New Mexico Territory. So Arizona and New Mexico, for a long portion of their history, were one state. Not really a state at that point; they were territories of the United States. It wasn't. They wouldn't be officially recognized until 1920, when they were admitted to the Union. Now, there was a small purchase of land that we negotiated with Mexico. It was called the Gadsden Purchase. At that point, it added some territory to what is present-day Arizona and New Mexico. And then in 1912, that was when Arizona was admitted to the Union. It's kind of interesting. When Arizona was admitted to the Union, it was almost admitted as one giant state combined with New Mexico. So it would have been the state of New Mexico, and just been. If you remember back to when I mentioned that it was called the New Mexico Territory. Well, apparently what happened was New Mexico and Arizona wanted to join the Union, but the terms of them joining the Union, the Arizona half of the state, or what became the Arizona half of the state, didn't like some of the things that that were requirements to joining the Union. There were some political shenanigans going on. The people who were organizing the statehood push, they were trying to make it so that there was still a balance maintained in the Senate and between the free states and the slave states. And Arizona wasn't having that. And so kind of an interesting thing as well is that they wanted certain provisions to be in the state constitution, and Congress was against it. So they wanted things like women's suffrage, and I'm trying to remember what the other ones were, but women's suffrage was one, being able to recall politicians, and some other things that they didn't want. Apparently, they sent that state constitution to be ratified and accepted by the the Senate and in recognition for their statehood, and they were turned down. So they edited it, took out those parts, sent it to the Senate. It was approved and was sent back, and then they added that stuff back in anyway. So they actually had things like women's suffrage way before it was ever a part of the main Constitution of the United States, to grant suffrage to all. If you're unfamiliar with the suffrage movement, that is the movement to give women and other minorities the right to vote. So, okay. So, some industry that is prevalent in Arizona. Arizona is a big part of the aerospace community. They have over 1,200 aerospace companies. They have other manufacturing. Intel has a plant there. Raytheon has one. Frito-Lay, which is the potato chips. Sorry about that. Arizona has the second fastest growing bioscience and healthcare industry in the United States. And then with its very, very stable climate. I mean, very stable climate. About 300 days of the year, Arizona receives sunlight. So they don't have a lot of storms. Their climate, while it is a desert area, and we'll get into that a bit later, and can get very, very hot. Arizona is one of the few, I should say one of the few. Arizona is one of the states that I actually have visited, and it's kind of funny. I was flying into Phoenix to change planes. That's not, I actually went there as a child with my parents to visit friends of theirs. I don't remember that, but apparently we went down there for Christmas one year. But I was flying into the Phoenix airport to change planes. And as we flew over Phoenix, the plane banked to make the approach to the runway, and I could see the city laid out below us as we were approaching the airport, and pools everywhere. You could see so many people had pools in their yard, and that's because Arizona is crazy hot. It gets so much sun during the year that, like I said, it has a very stable climate. It's hot, but it's relatively stable. So they do have a lot of film and digital media and business and financial that takes place in Arizona because it is conducive to those enterprises because of its stable climate. So, on to tourism. The Grand Canyon. That is the big draw to going to Arizona. The Grand Canyon is 227 miles long, which is about 365 kilometers. It's 1 mile deep, 1.6 kilometers, and it has an average width of 10 miles, which is 16 kilometers. And it's beautiful. Red sandstone cliffs. It was, carved out over millions of years by the Colorado River. And there's quite a lot you can do down there where you can go hiking. You can check out the Grand Canyon. There's even places that they have like glass walkways that are built out over the Grand Canyon, so you can go out and look down. That would be really cool. I haven't been to the Grand Canyon yet. Been to Arizona, not to the Grand Canyon yet, but that would be awesome. Sedona is another kind of red rock mountain with buttes, and it's an hour and a half drive north of Phoenix. Popular day trip, apparently. Mountain biking, hiking, golf course, lots of stuff to do out there in Sedona. Monument Valley is one that actually, to me, is a lot more interesting than the Grand Canyon or Sedona. It's called Monument Valley because it has rock formations that look like monuments that have been built and things, and they're named after different monuments. To me, that is a little bit more interesting than just seeing the Grand Canyon, is seeing these rock formations. So, yeah. Phoenix is a great place to go in Arizona. Like I said, if you're looking for a pool, you'll walk down the street and you trip over one. Seriously. Hiking, biking, campgrounds, Frank Lloyd Wright's Museum, the Heard Museum. There's a ton of stuff to do there in Phoenix. Another tourist attraction, which is kind of odd, is the Hoover Dam. It was built or completed in 1935. It crosses the Colorado River. It is 226 feet high and 1,244 feet long. I apologize. I don't have the kilometer conversions for those ones. I didn't look that up until I was just looking at it right now. Lake Mead is what they call the reservoir that was formed when the Hoover Dam was put into place. It holds the equivalent, apparently, of 2 years' flow of the Colorado River. You can drive across or walk across the dam for free. There's a charge for parking. And it's a power plant and everything. Yeah. So there you go. The last thing I want to talk about, as far as, obviously there's going to be a lot more attractions. A lot of them natural. Arizona has has the most number, if I remember right, of national monuments and parks in the United States. So it's interesting. But I wanted to talk about Tombstone. Now, Tombstone, you may have heard of. If you are from the United States, you've definitely heard of Tombstone. There was a movie that came out, I want to say back in the 90s, with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, that was based on Wyatt Earp and his life and his time living there in Tombstone. But Tombstone is the home of the OK Corral and the Boot Hill Graveyard. So those are both attractions to go see. It's kind of interesting. I was doing some. I'm trying to think. Actually, I will leave that off till later. But Tombstone, Arizona was founded. Excuse me. Was founded as basically a silver mining town, if I remember right. And the town rose up around it. Mines petered out, and it's now a ghost. It became a ghost town, and now it's a tourist attraction. So if you're interested in cowboys, shootouts, and all that kind of stuff, yeah, Tombstone is kind of the iconic place for reenactments and things like that, and going down to see the Old West. There are other places, obviously, but Tombstone is kind of one of the iconic places to check out what the United States was like during the Old West. There we go. All right, so here's some trivia that I found was incredibly interesting about Arizona. Arizona has no daylight savings time changes. Let me say that correctly. I don't know that I would like to live in Arizona, but I would like that. I hate daylight savings time. I hate doing the fall back, spring forward thing. I think we should get rid of it. And I envy Arizonans that they don't have to change times. So it is against the law in Arizona to refuse a glass of water. Yeah. Crazy. However, knowing that Arizona looks like this picture that I've got here on this slide, yeah, it's understandable that you cannot refuse a glass of water. You may not drink it, but you have to have it. Arizona is part of the Four Corners area. Four Corners is the only place in the United States where you can go and stand in 4 states at the same time. Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, they all actually meet in one point. And my dad used to joke that he went there as a kid, and their dog sat on the 4 corners, and so he had his butt in all 4 states. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but it's an anecdote, and it's funny that his dog sat on it and had his butt in all 4 corners, or in all 4 states. The saguaro cactus. This is the famous saguaro cactus. You can see a picture of it here. It is kind of the state mascot, if you will. Huge part of Arizona, very iconic in its look, and this picture does not do it justice. These things are massive. The old ones, the older ones anyway. Younger ones, obviously, they have to grow up, but ones with the arms like this, they're massive. There's actually a Darwin Award where, and if you haven't checked out the Darwin Awards, hilarious, but I digress. He actually decided to cut one of these down, which, if I remember right, is against the law. But he cut it down and it fell on him. Yeah, it crushed him. They're that massive. So, and it's also the only place that you can find a saguaro cactus. So, the OK Corral is here, and interestingly enough, the shootout didn't happen at the OK Corral. It happened close, but not at. It actually happened between Fly's Photograph Gallery and the Harwood House on Fremont Street. The corral is close, and apparently the name just stuck. But the gunfight lasted only about 30 seconds, and they say that there were about 30 shots fired during this. And the gunfight scene from the movie Tombstone is almost twice as long as the real gunfight lasted, interestingly enough. Arizona is roughly the size of Italy in Europe there. They have more mountains in Arizona than Switzerland has, and they have more golf courses than Scotland does. Interesting. Although, to be fair, Arizona probably is a lot bigger than Scotland. I'd have to check on the dimension, on the square miles, but I'm pretty sure that with it being equivalent in size to Italy, that it's probably smaller. That Ireland is probably smaller than Arizona. All right, so the hottest temperature ever recorded in Arizona was 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 50 degrees Celsius. And let me tell you, that is scorching. Around where I live, it gets up into the hundreds, but we've never gotten into 122 territory. This is, you don't go outside or you will probably be suffering heat stroke and sunburn within minutes. You just don't do that. This is where the Navajo code talkers came from. Now, if you are familiar with World War II, the United States was trying to figure out a way to keep the Japanese and the Axis powers, Germany, etc., from understanding and breaking our codes. Well, they used Navajo code talkers. And the reason for this is kind of unique, is that Navajo doesn't have a close language to it, a relative language. So, for instance, if you understand about the Romance languages and things, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, they all come from Latin, and as such, there's a certain amount of crossover between the languages. So you can look at it, and if you know one, you may not be able to get everything said or written in one of the other languages, but you can get pretty close. And you can even you even have a handle on Latin as well, because Latin was the root. The Navajo language doesn't have a close root, and so because of that, the Axis powers during World War II never broke the codes that were transmitted in Navajo. They just couldn't figure it out. So that's where the Navajo code talkers came from. And interestingly enough, little landlocked Arizona had a navy. Yes, they had a navy. Apparently it was 2 boats, and they used it to patrol the Colorado River to keep the Californians out. Yeah. I would have to look and see when it was that the Arizona Navy was decommissioned, but yeah, they patrolled the Colorado River to keep the Californians out. That's it for Arizona. Let me know if you have questions or comments about it. Like and subscribe, comment down below, and enjoy yourself. Have fun. Enjoy.